I went in for a hip replacement with my wife holding my hand. As the sedation pulled me under, I caught the surgeon leaning toward the nurse, his voice barely above a whisper. Adjust his post-op protocol. Use what his wife arranged. And keep it off the main chart. My eyes were closed, but my mind was screaming. I forced every muscle in my body to stay limp, to keep breathing slow and even, to give no sign that I had just heard the beginning of the end of my life. 36 hours later, I found out exactly what my wife had arranged. I packed a bag, drove to my oldest friend's house at 2 in the morning, and told him everything. What he uncovered over the next 3 weeks made the betrayal in that operating room look like a kindness. But before I tell you what we found, I need you to do something. Comment your location and current time. Let me know someone out there is listening, because for a long time, I thought I was completely alone in this. At 62, I believed I had earned the life I was living. 30 years of building Callaway & Associates into one of Nashville's most respected architectural firms. 28 years of marriage to Diana. A son, Marcus, finishing his surgical residency at Vanderbilt. A house in Belle Meade that I designed myself. Every beam, every angle, every window placed to catch the Tennessee morning light. I thought I knew what my life was. I thought I understood the people in it. I was a fool. I met Diana in the spring of 1996 at a fundraiser for the Nashville Symphony. I was 32, freshly successful, still grieving my mother who had passed the year before and left me a sizable inheritance on top of what the firm was already generating. Diana was 26, working as an event planner, new to Nashville. She said she had moved from Vermont. She said she wanted a slower pace of life. She was beautiful, warm, and she listened to me talk about architecture like it was the most fascinating subject in the world. We married in October of that year. Marcus came along in 1998. For 28 years, I believed we had built something real. The hip had been bothering me for 2 years. Old basketball injury from college, arthritis compounding it, bone on bone by the time I finally agreed to surgery. Diana had been pushing me toward it for months. She had already found the surgeon before I even said yes. Dr. Alan Prescott, 54, chief of orthopedics at a private surgical center east of Nashville. Excellent reputation, board certified, published researcher. Diana had done her homework, she said. Only the best for you, Robert. Looking back, the fact that she had a surgeon's name, a facility picked out, and a consultation scheduled before I had made the decision should have told me everything. But I was a man who trusted his wife. That was my first mistake. The consultation was on a Tuesday in September. Prescott was polished. Tall, athletic build, the kind of easy confidence that comes from cutting people open for a living and having them thank you afterward. He explained the procedure, the recovery timeline, the pain management plan. Diana asked more questions than I did. Specific questions about the anesthesia, about the medications, about how long I would be on painkillers post-surgery. Prescott answered every one while looking directly at her. Something about their rhythm felt rehearsed, but I dismissed it. My wife was thorough. That was one of the things I loved about her. The surgery was scheduled for October 8th. Diana drove me to the facility at 6 in the morning. She kissed my forehead in the pre-op room. "I'll be right here when you wake up," she said. The anesthesiologist explained they would use a spinal block with twilight sedation. I would be relaxed, drowsy, unlikely to remember anything. He was wrong about the last part. The operating room was cold. Monitors beeped. Voices murmured. The sedation made everything soft, distant, like listening to a conversation through water. I could not move, could not open my eyes, but I could hear. Prescott's voice came first, low and controlled. His wife confirmed the dosage adjustment. A woman's voice, the surgical nurse. She called this morning, said to start with the higher protocol, oxycodone 40 milligrams every 4 hours for the first week, then transition to the extended release. Good. Keep that off the primary discharge paperwork. Use the secondary chart she set up with my office. The pharmacy already has the script. The nurse hesitated. Doctor, that's significantly above standard for a hip replacement. The guidelines recommend. I'm aware of the guidelines. His wife has power of attorney for medical decisions. She signed the consent forms. This is between me and the family. Understood? A pause. Understood. My heart was slamming inside my chest. but the monitors showed nothing unusual. The drugs kept my body still while my mind burned. Why was Diana arranging my pain medication behind my back? Why was it being kept off official records? What was 40 milligrams every 4 hours going to do to a 62-year-old man who had never taken anything stronger than ibuprofen? I knew the answer. I had watched a documentary about it 2 years ago. I had seen the news stories. High-dose opioids prescribed to people who didn't need them. Dependence within 2 weeks. Addiction within a month. And if someone wanted to engineer an overdose after that, it would look like a tragic but predictable outcome. Another statistic in the opioid crisis. No one would investigate. No one would suspect the grieving widow. The procedure lasted 90 minutes. When they wheeled me to recovery, I kept my eyes closed and my breathing slow. A nurse came in with medication. 2 pills in a small cup. "Mr. Calloway, time for your pain medication." I opened my eyes slowly, as if just waking. "What is it?" "Oxycodone. Dr. Prescott prescribed it for your recovery." "How many milligrams?" She checked the chart. The secondary chart, 40. "That seems high. Can I start with something lower? Maybe just 20? She looked uncomfortable. "I'll check with the doctor." Prescott appeared 15 minutes later. "Robert, I hear you're concerned about the pain medication. Just cautious. I've never taken opioids before. I'd rather start low." "Understandable, but post-surgical pain from a hip replacement can be severe. We don't want you suffering unnecessarily. Your wife and I discussed this during the consultation." "My wife discussed my medication dosage with you? She was concerned about your pain management. She wanted to make sure you were comfortable." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw something behind the professional mask. A flicker of calculation, a man running numbers. "I'll take the 20, I said. "If the pain gets worse, I'll let you know." Something shifted in his expression, not quite frustration, more like a plan being adjusted. "Of course, whatever makes you comfortable." That night Diana arrived to take me home. She was attentive, loving, the perfect caretaker. She had prepared the guest bedroom downstairs so I would not have to climb stairs. She had filled the prescription Prescott called in. I saw the bottle on the kitchen counter. Oxycodone, 40 milligrams. Take one every 4 hours as needed for pain. The nurse said I should start with 20, I told her. But Alan said 40 is better for the first few days. "You don't want to be in agony, Robert." "Alan." She called him Alan, not Dr. Prescott. "Alan, I'll stick with 20, I said. That night, lying in the guest bed, unable to sleep from the pain and the adrenaline, I texted Frank Beaulieu. Frank and I had been roommates at Georgia Tech. After college, he spent 22 years in the FBI, specializing in financial crimes and fraud. He retired in 2019 and opened a private consulting firm in Atlanta. If there was one person on this planet I trusted completely, it was Frank. "I need to talk to you, not on the phone. In person. Something is wrong with Diana." His reply came in 40 seconds. "I'll be in Nashville tomorrow. Say nothing to anyone." Frank arrived the next afternoon. Diana was out, ostensibly at a client meeting. I sat across from him at my own kitchen table and told him everything. The overheard conversation, the dosage, the secondary chart, the way she called him Alan. Frank listened without interrupting, the way FBI agents are trained to do. "You're right to be scared," he said when I finished. "But I need you to keep taking the low dose. Act normal. Let her think the plan is working, just slower. Can you do that?" "I've been acting normal for 24 hours already." "Good. I'm going to run a full background on Prescott and on Diana. And Robert," he leaned forward, "I need you to be prepared for what I might find." "I'm prepared." "No," he said quietly. "You're not, but you will be." 6 days later, Frank called me into his hotel room at the Hermitage. The bed was covered in documents, printouts, photographs. He looked like he had not slept in 3 days. "Sit down," he said, "and don't interrupt until I'm finished." He started with Prescott. Dr. Alan Prescott, born in Savannah, Georgia, medical degree from Emory, residency at Johns Hopkins, impeccable credentials on paper. But Frank had dug deeper. In 2011, Prescott had been quietly removed from a hospital system in Raleigh, North Carolina. A patient's family had filed a complaint alleging that Prescott had overprescribed opioids following a routine knee replacement. The patient, a 61-year-old retired banker, developed a severe addiction within 6 weeks. 3 months later, he died of an accidental overdose in his home. His wife inherited $4.2 million in life insurance, sold his investment portfolio, and relocated to Key West, Florida. The wife's name, Frank said, watching my face, was Diana Holloway, before she married the banker, Gerald Holloway, in 2006. The room tilted. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Diana told me she had never been married before me." "She lied. She married Gerald Holloway in Raleigh in 2006. He died in 2011. She collected the insurance, sold everything, moved to Nashville in early 1996, 4 months before she met you at that fundraiser." I could not speak. My hands were gripping the arms of the chair so hard my knuckles had gone white. "There's more," Frank said. "Diana didn't come from Vermont. She grew up in Savannah, same hometown as Prescott. They went to high school together. Chatham County records show they dated in their senior year. Yearbook photos confirm it. He showed me a photocopy. 2 teenagers at a prom, the girl in a lavender dress, the boy in a rented tux, Diana and Alan, 1988. "They've known each other for 37 years, I said, "and they never stopped being in contact. Phone records show regular calls between them going back to 2009, 2 years before Gerald Holloway died. After Holloway's death, the calls continued, monthly, sometimes weekly. When Prescott moved to Nashville in 2018, the calls became daily. 2018, I repeated. That's when Diana started pushing me to update my life insurance." Frank nodded. "Your current policy. $4.8 million. Primary beneficiary, Diana Calloway." I stared at the number. Then I thought about Gerald Holloway, 61 years old, dead of an overdose, 3 months after surgery. I was 62. The math was not subtle. "They've done this before," I said, "and they're doing it again. To me, yes," Frank said. "But this time, we know." He laid out the financial trail next. Over the past 12 years, Diana had siphoned roughly $370,000 from our joint accounts. Small amounts. $1,500 here, $2,000 there. Always categorized as household expenses, donations, gifts. Beneath the threshold of anything I would notice. The money flowed into an LLC registered in Wyoming called Holloway Consulting. The registered agent was a woman named Vera Marsh, Diana's younger sister, 48, living in Chattanooga. Vera was a CPA with her own small firm. She had built the entire financial infrastructure. Shell company, separate bank accounts, cash disbursements to Prescott disguised as consulting fees. Prescott's been receiving roughly $8,000 a month for the past 3 years, Frank said. Close to $300,000 total. Vera takes a 10% cut. $300,000, I said. Of my money, going directly to the man who's trying to kill you. The next part was the worst. Frank had obtained records from the Raleigh Medical Examiner's office. Gerald Holloway's cause of death was listed as accidental opioid overdose. But Frank had contacted the medical examiner who handled the case, now retired, living in Wilmington. The examiner remembered it. He had found the oxycodone levels unusually high, but there was no evidence of foul play. The prescription was legitimate. The patient had a documented history of increasing his own dosage against medical advice. Case closed. Except the documented history was fabricated, Frank said. Prescott wrote those notes. He created a paper trail showing Holloway requesting higher doses, complaining of increased pain, exhibiting drug-seeking behavior. None of it was verified by a second physician. Holloway's own family doctor told me Holloway hated taking pills, would barely take an aspirin. They murdered him, I said, and they got away with it. They did, and they're setting up the exact same scenario for you. The high initial dosage, the secondary chart kept off official records. The gradual escalation. In 6 to 8 weeks, you would be physically dependent. In 3 months, the dosage would be high enough that an overdose would look inevitable. Diana would find you in bed one morning, not breathing. Prescott would express professional regret. The medical examiner would see a man with a documented opioid dependency following major surgery. Another tragic case. No investigation. I sat in that hotel room for a long time, saying nothing. 28 years. Every morning she made coffee. Every evening she asked about my day. Every birthday, every holiday, Every quiet Sunday on the porch, watching the sun go down over our yard. All of it performed. All of it calculated. I was not her husband. I was her investment, maturing on schedule. "What about Marcus?" I asked. My voice cracked on my son's name. Frank hesitated. Then he showed me an email recovered from Diana's cloud backup. Sent to Prescott, dated August of the previous year. "Once everything is settled, M will need to be managed. He'll inherit the firm eventually, but I'll control the trust until he's 35. By then we'll be established somewhere warm. He's emotional. He'll grieve hard, but he'll move on. Kids are resilient." Prescott's reply. "Agreed. The son is not a factor. Never was. Not a factor. My son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the young man I watched graduate from medical school, reduced to a management problem, an emotional inconvenience to be handled on the way to somewhere warm." Something changed in me at that moment. The grief burned away. What replaced it was cold, clear, and absolute. I looked at Frank. "I want them destroyed. Legally. Permanently. All three of them." Frank smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." We spent 2 weeks building the trap. Frank brought in a tech specialist who wired our house with concealed cameras and audio. Every room, every conversation. We contacted Detective Sarah Chen of the Nashville Metro Police, a veteran investigator specializing in medical fraud and insurance crimes. Chen had actually reviewed the Holloway case years ago as a young detective and always suspected something was wrong but could never prove it. When Frank showed her our evidence, her eyes went hard. "Get me a recorded confession about the medication plan," she said. "I'll get the warrants." I played my part perfectly. I told Diana the pain was getting worse. I asked for the 40-milligram pills. She practically glowed. I palmed every single one and flushed them down the toilet. To Diana, I was a man slowly surrendering to the medication. I complained of drowsiness, of foggy thinking. I dropped things, slurred my words slightly at dinner. She watched me with tender concern that I now recognized as anticipation. On the evening of October 29th, I told Diana I had a late meeting with a client about a commercial project downtown. I would not be home until midnight. The relief in her voice was unmistakable. "Take your time, honey. I'll just read and go to bed early." At 7:15, our cameras captured Diana leaving the house in heels, an dress I had bought her for our anniversary. At 7:40, she pulled into the parking garage of Prescott's condominium on West End Avenue. At 8 o'clock, the camera in Prescott's living room, installed by Frank's tech specialist 3 days earlier through a maintenance worker we had recruited, showed Diana letting herself in with her own key. They embraced. They kissed. It was not the greeting of co-conspirators. It was the reunion of lovers who had been waiting 37 years. I watched from a surveillance van parked 2 blocks away. Frank sat beside me. Detective Chen monitored from a separate vehicle with 2 officers. "You okay?" Frank asked. "I stopped loving her the moment I heard that conversation in the operating room," I said. "This is just confirmation." On screen, they poured wine. They talked. And then Diana set down her glass. "How much longer, Alan? He's been on the medication for 3 weeks. When does it start to really take hold?" "He's been resistant, taking lower doses than prescribed. But his wife keeps pushing, and he's starting to comply. Another 3 to 4 weeks and the dependency will be physiological. After that, we increase gradually. By January, we're in the target range." "January," Diana repeated. "That's 3 more months of pretending. You've pretended for 28 years. 3 more months is nothing." Diana laughed. "You're right. Although Gerald was easier, he actually trusted the doctor. Robert's smarter. But smart doesn't matter when the chemistry takes over. Once the opioids rewire his brain, he won't have a choice. And the overdose will look exactly like Gerald's. Post-surgical patient with escalating opioid use. Took too many pills one night. Found unresponsive by his loving wife. Tragic, but statistically predictable. The medical examiner will sign off within 48 hours. 4.8 million, Diana said, plus selling the firm. Robert built it to nearly 30 million in assets. You've earned every penny, Prescott said. 28 years of performing. That's dedication. What about Marcus? He's been calling more often. Asking questions about Robert's recovery. Marcus will be devastated. He'll bury himself in his residency. We set up the trust. You control it until he turns 35. By then we're in Portugal. No extradition treaty for financial crimes. He'll never know, Diana said. He's like his father, trusting, loyal, blind. In the van, my hands trembled. Not from grief, from rage so controlled it felt like ice water in my veins. That's enough, Chen said through the radio. Conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, reference to a prior homicide. All units, move in. We went up together. Frank, Chen, 4 officers. When Chen knocked on the door and announced Nashville Metro Police, the silence lasted exactly 5 seconds. Prescott opened the door in a bathrobe, attempting calm. Diana stood behind him, the color draining from her face the moment she saw me in the hallway. Robert, she stammered. What this isn't. It's over, Diana. All of it. Prescott was handcuffed first. Conspiracy to commit murder. Medical fraud. Accessory in the death of Gerald Holloway. He said nothing. Diana screamed when they cuffed her. You can't do this. I'm your wife. 28 years, Robert. 28 years of lies, I said. I heard everything. In the operating room. In this apartment. Every word. And I know about Gerald. The mention of Gerald's name stopped her cold. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Vera Marsh is being arrested in Chattanooga right now, Chen told her. Simultaneous operations. No one is warning anyone. As they led Diana toward the elevator, she turned back to me. Marcus will never forgive you. He loves me. He'll choose me. Maybe, I said. But he'll be alive. And eventually, he'll know the truth. She was right about one thing. Marcus did choose her. At first, I called him that night at 11. He answered on the second ring. Dad, what's going on? Mom just called me from jail. Marcus, I need you to come home. I have to explain. Explain what? Mom says you set her up. She says you've been paranoid since the surgery, that the painkillers are affecting your judgment. Marcus, please listen. She's crying, Dad. She said you had her arrested in front of strangers. How could you do that to her? There are recordings, evidence, financial records. Your mother was... I don't want to hear it. Mom told me everything. She said you tried to turn me against her. He hung up. For 6 weeks, my son would not speak to me. He visited Diana in jail every weekend. She told him I was controlling, that I had manufactured evidence, that Prescott was just a friend. Marcus hired a defense attorney for her. A good one. Expensive. I did not force the issue. I wrote Marcus a letter. 7 handwritten pages. I told him the truth, all of it, including Gerald Holloway. I told him I understood why he believed his mother. She had been a good mother to him. I did not doubt that she loved him in her way. But love and honesty are not the same thing, and the evidence existed independent of my feelings or hers. I was not asking him to stop loving his mother. I was asking him to look at the truth with his own eyes. I mailed it on November 4th. He read it. According to the delivery confirmation, he did not respond. Thanksgiving came. Marcus spent it with a friend's family. I ate alone at the kitchen table in a house that felt like a museum of memories I could no longer trust. Then, on December 16th, Frank called. Marcus came to see me this morning. He wants to hear the recordings. Does he believe me? Not yet, but he found something on his own. He ran into a colleague at Vanderbilt who rotated through the Raleigh hospital system in 2012. The colleague remembered the Holloway case, remembered hearing rumors about the surgeon and the widow. Marcus is starting to ask the right questions. Frank played him everything. The operating room recording, the apartment confession, the financial documents, the email calling him not a factor. Marcus visited Diana in jail on December 20th. I know what happened because he told me 3 days later, when he finally came home. He had sat across from her and asked one question. Did you know Alan Prescott before you met Dad? Diana tried to deflect. She blamed me. She blamed Frank. She said the recordings were manipulated. Marcus told her he had seen the yearbook photo, the prom. Savannah, 1988. Diana went quiet. He asked her about Gerald Holloway. She said Gerald was an accident. Marcus told her he had spoken with Gerald's daughter from a first marriage, who had always believed her father was murdered but could never prove it. Diana's composure cracked. She told Marcus he did not understand, that she and Alan had been torn apart as young people, that life had been unfair to them. That Gerald was a means to an end, and so was I. But that did not mean she had not loved Marcus. You planned to kill my father, Marcus said, and you called me not a factor. I said you were resilient. That's different. You were going to let me find my father dead. Let me grieve. Let me believe it was an accident, and then disappear to Portugal while I spent the next 8 years wondering why my family fell apart. Diana reached for his hand. Marcus pulled away. Dad wrote me a letter, he said. He told me I had every right to believe you. He said you were a good mother, and he didn't doubt you loved me. He said he wasn't asking me to choose. He just asked me to look at the evidence. And I did, and it's all true. Every word. He stood up. Diana called after him. He paused at the door. I hope it was worth it, Mom. 28 years of performing. I hope the role was satisfying, because you just lost your only audience. He walked out. 3 days before Christmas, I was in my home office reviewing project drawings when I heard the front door open. A bag dropped on the hardwood floor. Then his voice, quiet and uncertain. Dad, are you home? I stood up so fast my chair hit the wall. Marcus stood in the hallway, duffel bag at his feet, eyes swollen from days of crying. Neither of us moved for a long moment. Then he crossed the distance and wrapped his arms around me, this 27-year-old man who had once been a boy who believed his mother could do no wrong. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I chose her over you. I held him. I held my son, and I cried. You were protecting someone you loved, I said. There's nothing wrong with that. She wasn't who I thought she was. No, but I am. And I'm right here. We stood there until the shaking stopped. Then we sat on the couch and he told me everything. Frank's office, the recordings, the jail visit, his mother's face when he mentioned Gerald Holloway. She really did it before, he said. Gerald. She killed him. Yes. And she would have killed you. Yes. How long did you know? Since October 8th, the day of the surgery. He did the math. Over 2 months. You knew for 2 months, and I was out there defending her, paying for her lawyer. You didn't have the evidence. You had your mother's tears and 27 years of trust. That's a powerful thing. Why didn't you force me to listen? Because you're not a child anymore. If I forced you, you'd have resented me forever. You had to find the truth on your own terms. What if I never did? Then I would have lost my son. But you'd be safe. That's all that mattered. He broke down again. I let him. What do we do now? He asked eventually. Now there's a trial. And then we rebuild. The trial came in May. Judge David Thornton presiding. The prosecution played every recording. The jury heard Diana's voice, the voice of a wife and mother, calmly discussing dosage escalation and overdose timelines. They heard Prescott reference Gerald Holloway as a successful precedent. They saw the financial trail, $370,000 siphoned over 12 years. The shell company, Vera's meticulous bookkeeping of stolen money. Gerald Holloway's case was reopened. His daughter testified. Elizabeth, 41, who had spent a decade believing her father's death was suspicious but powerless to prove it. She wept on the stand. Marcus testified on day 5. Steady, clear, devastating. My mother was a loving parent, he said. But love can be a performance. And my mother was the greatest actress I have ever seen. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Prescott was convicted on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, second-degree murder in the Holloway case, medical fraud, 30 years, no parole, license permanently revoked. Diana received 22 years. Vera received 6 after a partial cooperation agreement. When the verdicts were read, Marcus gripped my hand. I felt no triumph, only the quiet relief of a man who had walked to the edge of a cliff and been pulled back just in time. 1 year later, I stood on the front porch of a house I had redesigned from the ground up. New paint, new floors, new memories replacing the ones that had been poisoned. Marcus had finished his residency and joined a surgical practice in Nashville. He came for dinner every Sunday. He had started seeing a woman named Claire, a pediatrician he met through the hospital. Kind, honest, direct. The first time I met her, she looked me in the eye and said, "Marcus told me everything. I think you're the strongest person I've ever heard of." I liked her immediately. The firm was thriving, valued near $35 million. I had established a foundation in Gerald Holloway's name, funding opioid awareness programs and supporting families affected by prescription fraud. Pain turned into purpose. On a Sunday evening in June, Marcus and I sat on the porch, watching the sun drop behind the trees. Claire had gone inside to make coffee. "Dad," Marcus said, "thank you for waiting, for giving me time to find the truth myself. You would have gotten there eventually." "Maybe, but a lot of fathers would have given up on a son who chose the wrong side." "There are no sides," I said. "There's just the truth. And you found it." He was quiet for a moment. "I learned something this year about what legacy really means." "What's that?" "It's not the buildings. It's not the firm. It's what you did when everything was taken from you. You didn't lie. You didn't manipulate. You waited, and you trusted me to figure it out. That's the legacy, Dad. That's what I want to carry forward." I looked at my son, this man who had been called not a factor by the woman who gave birth to him, this man who had chosen truth over comfort, who had walked through fire and come out standing. "That's all I ever wanted to leave you," I said. That evening, after Marcus and Claire had gone home, I sat alone on the porch with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands. The stars were out. The neighborhood was quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Love you, Dad. See you Sunday." I smiled. The house was quiet, but it was not empty. Not anymore. So here I am today, 63 years old, telling you this story. Not for sympathy, not for attention, but because I wish someone had told me what I am about to tell you. Trust the people you love, but never stop paying attention. When someone has every answer ready before you have asked the question, that is not preparation. That is a script. When something feels too perfect, it probably is. I trusted blindly for 28 years, and it nearly cost me my life. God gave me a second chance when I heard those words in that operating room, and I thank Him every day for that moment of clarity. Protect your assets, yes, but more importantly, protect your family. The greatest legacy you can leave your children is not money or property. It is the courage to face the truth, even when it destroys everything you believed. If this story reached you, please share it. Comment below if you have experienced something similar or have wisdom for others walking this road. Subscribe to vt-sweetrevenge for more true stories that could protect your family. Your support helps others avoid the mistakes I made.